there seems to be a dichotomy that many people live with. The dichotomy is this, is between reason and faith. Reason and faith. I believe that it's a false dichotomy that we've kind of set up because faith does not mean that you throw reason out the window with everything. Having faith that the Lord has called you to do something and is asking you to take these steps does not mean that reason just goes out of the window. Because just because you reason doesn't mean that you have no faith. Reason's a good thing. The scriptures talk about reason. Often Paul in his letters uses reason to use the logic of the cities that he's presenting the gospel to. He reasons with them and then presents the message of the gospel. It's a good thing. But many people, I believe, have a false idea of what faith is. We have a false idea of what faith is. Some people see faith as making a bunch of horrible decisions and then just calling it faith. For instance, some of you in this room may be called to go into full-time ministry or the mission field or something along those lines. But the reality is, like for most of you in the room, that's not what God is calling you to. He's calling you to be a missionary in your workplace. And so what I mean by recklessness or not having reason is like, don't go to your job tomorrow and just quit. Like, don't walk in and be like, you know what? I'm just living by faith. I'm quitting my job. Because you'll be living by faith and bankrupt and without a house. Like there's the responsibilities that we have as adults to provide for ourselves and provide for our families, all of those things. Now, the caveat to that is, if the Lord is asking you to do something, do it. But reason and faith do not always have to be at odds with each other. And we're gonna see that today, this tension between reason and faith played out by the disciples. Mark chapter 6 is where we're gonna be this morning, the feeding of 5,000, starting in verse 30. This is what the word of God says. The apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while. For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away to the boat and to a desolate place by themselves. Now, many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all of the towns and got there ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and Jesus, he had compassion on them because they were like a sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered them, you give them something to eat. And they said to him, shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give them something to eat? And he said to them, how many loaves do you have? Go and see. And when they had found out, they said, 5 loaves and 2 fish. And then he commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups by hundreds and by 50s. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and the fish, and those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. A lot of things happening in this passage, and I want to give us kind of a recap of where we've been the last couple of weeks because it really leads into what we're seeing now. Jesus, a couple of passages before, sends out the 12 disciples. He says, you are not here just to follow me and to be in a circle of other believers, but you are here so that you can be sent out to proclaim and usher in the kingdom of God. Just as I have come to the world, I'm sending you out into the world. And the disciples go out and they're proclaiming this new kingdom, this message of the gospel. Healings are taking place. I mean, they're in awe that what they've seen Jesus do for the last little while, they're able to do themselves, not with their own power, but through the power of the Spirit. In the middle of all of this, John the Baptist gets beheaded from Herod, and we know the story, right? Like John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin, was speaking truth to power. He gets beheaded, just incredibly high highs and really low lows in the life of the disciples so far. They're on this mountaintop experience because they've just proclaimed this new kingdom and incredible things are happening. And all of a sudden they come back and one of their people that they look up to, John the Baptist, has been beheaded. Like, what do we do now? This was a foreshadowing of the life ahead for Jesus. That soon his life would be taken from him, and also a foreshadowing of the disciples' lives. Now, in the modern church, we don't talk about this as much as we probably should, but if you look at the life of the disciples, like I don't think many people would be signing up for discipleship if you knew what the disciples actually went through when they were in the time of Jesus. Hey, we've got a table in the lobby, really want you to sign up for discipleship, but you're probably gonna have to be crucified hanging upside down. I like the discipleship, I don't like the death. Right? Like that's the life that Jesus is proclaiming to his disciples, high highs, low lows, and then we start to see all of this coming to light. In the first two passages, or verses of this passage, the disciples have come back from their mission, and they're reporting about all the incredible things that God has done through them. There's an excitement, there's a buzz. Presumably they're just fired up like you ever met somebody that's like newly saved and they're just excited about everything? You know what I'm talking about? In the denomination that I grew up in, we had this thing called Master's Commission. And Master's Commission students, they just walked around like, Jesus. And you're like, yo, you're weird, creeping me out. You know, like some of you have no clue. It was an experience. They're fired up. They're coming to proclaim to Jesus what had happened. But Jesus notices something, that the disciples are exhausted and tired. They're tired. You can see it in their face. Like you ever seen somebody come through the doors on Sunday morning and you just think, like, not because of their looks, but they just look tired. Like in their soul, they look tired. You're like, ooh. They seem tired. Why? Because life's busy, right? You're getting your kids ready. You're rushing to church. You had a fight with your spouse on the way to church. You get to the check-in. There's a line. I'm going to go get coffee. I got coffee. I go back. There's still a line. You come into church after the first song, and it's like, why did I even come today? Just feel tired, overwhelmed. Jesus notices their tiredness, and he says, come away to a desolate place. This word desolate is usually translated as wilderness or a quiet place. Like to get away from the busyness and the chaos of life and to experience just peace and calmness. Now in our day, we don't do well with quietness. If I was to do an experiment today and say, hey, we're gonna spend the next 5 minutes in silence, it would feel like torture to all of us. We don't like silence. We actually get silence and then we fill the silence with other things because it feels like I just can't take the quietness. I was on a retreat 2 weeks ago. I think it was was that last week? I don't know when it was. Last week, maybe. The weeks run together. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You just feel like, that was like last week and no, it was 2 years ago. I was on this retreat in Hill Country in Brady, Texas, 700-acre ranch. And all that we knew is that we were signed up, and on day one, you had to be there at a certain time, and then you left at a certain time on Thursday. They didn't tell you anything else. And after our morning sessions and lunch, after lunch, they said, it's 12:45. Until 3 p.m., you're not allowed to talk to anybody. Some of you're like, that sounds amazing. But I like to talk. Any talkers in the room? I'll feel like, if I feel like things are not going well, I'll start talking more because I'm like, somebody needs to do something here. I have that social anxiety. 2.5 hours, At first I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And then what I learned is because I didn't have my phone and I wasn't allowed to talk with people, I'm literally sitting by a creek in this kind of this cavern, like I don't even know what you call it because we don't have them in Magnolia. There's rocks behind me. And there's like this really big rock face, and then there's this creek, and I'm just sitting there like, this is the best thing I think I've ever done. What a concept just to be quiet for a little bit. Disciples had obviously been effective in their work. The crowds are following them, and Jesus, being sensitive to their physical needs, says, you need to get away. Come away with me. Mark 6:32 and 34 through 34. Look what it says. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognizing them, and they ran there on foot, all from the towns, and got there ahead of them. And when they went ashore, a great crowd he saw a great crowd, Jesus did, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. Have you ever felt just utterly exhausted? Utterly exhausted to where you get to the end of the day and you're like, all I want to do is sleep. And I don't even know if sleep's gonna recover me, but I'm just exhausted. I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my soul. And then you finally lay down, and what happens? Your phone rings, and it's somebody that you really need to answer the phone for. And you're like, or maybe you have a really long week and it's a weekend and it's Sunday and you lay down and you're like, I'm gonna get my very holy Sunday afternoon nap, because it's a spiritual gift to have a Sunday afternoon nap. This is always tell people this, don't call me Sunday afternoon, I'm not answering. I'm sleeping. And you can call it lazy, I'll call it righteous. And so if you're laying down for your nap on Sunday afternoon and your kids come to you with something that's very important, like the password to the device that they went to play on. Y'all have these moments? It's very important. Mom, Dad, I've got to wake you up because I got to have this password. It can feel like there's sometimes never a break because we are so available. We're very available people. We offer ourselves up to anybody and to everybody, and then we run a life that's so busy and so chaotic, we get to the end of the day and we have nothing left. Jesus is teaching us something here. He's like, listen, you can only do so much. Your body can only take so much. And I know that we live in the hustle culture where there's all these people on Instagram that tell you, like, listen, if you're not waking up at 4 a.m. and doing 4-hour workout before 8 a.m. and you're not doing it, then you're failing at life. Get it together, buddy. Y'all know those people? Those are the people that I never want to be friends with because they don't enjoy life. It has to be what the disciples were feeling of, like, we're so tired, we're so exhausted, and Jesus sees their needs and they get in a boat to get away. Now, I want you to think for a moment, I think this is like one of the funniest parts of the Gospels. They're so tired and Jesus is like, let's go away to a desolate place. We're gonna go get in the boat. Now, they're not getting on a jet boat or a sport boat or a motorboat. They are literally getting in a boat to paddle down the shore. Like, think about this for a moment. They're going so slow that the people run ahead of them and beat them to where they're going. Like, I don't know about you, but I would think, like, I think I'll just swim from here. Or maybe we'll just fake them all out. We'll send the boat that way and we'll run the other way. But here they are just rowing, like, we're gonna go to who are all these people? A lot of people. We're going to a desolate, I think they're coming for you, Jesus. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think that I would have compassion on those people in my humanity. They get off this boat huge crowd following them, waiting for them, and Jesus, being who he is, the Son of God, it says that he was moved with compassion. Not me. I would have already had my vacation responder on my email. Anybody? I would have put my phone on do not disturb. I would have done all these things to prepare people. Come back next week. I think what this is showing us is Jesus is showing us a separation between the character of God and the character of man. The meaning of this word, compassion, that Mark writes with is to be moved so inwardly that you have to do something about it. Like I can't just sit and watch. I can't just sit and watch orphans across our world not be cared for. I have to do something. There is such a thing as compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue. In the world of psychology, the idea is this, is that if you are in the middle of the trenches with somebody or a family, or if you work in a nonprofit world that like Leslie Fussell, who works with SOS, that are meeting needs every single day of every week, eventually what happens is that you take on the weight and the responsibility of other people, and your body starts to respond in a way that says, I'm gonna make you stop. Whether you want to stop or not, I'm gonna make you stop. It's compassion fatigue. And you can get to a certain point to where you're like, you know what? I don't care anymore. And it makes us cynical. There's hungry people in our community. I'm going to bed. It makes us cynical because your physical body can only take so much, but not for Jesus. Not for Jesus. And I fear that we have this picture of who Jesus is that is wrong. We feel sometimes that I can only come to Jesus so many times because if I keep coming to him, he's gonna have compassion fatigue. And finally, he's gonna look at me and say, listen, you've been coming a lot. There's a lot of other people. Get to the back of the line. That's what we kind of walk around this feeling of who Jesus is. But I wanna set the record straight, is that there is never a limit to God's compassion for his people. Never. In fact, Jesus is yearning for us to come to him. Has anybody ever had that person that, and it's probably not a collective, but let's just say it's a church that you may have been involved in some point. And you know that the last thing that I'm gonna do is ask that person how they're doing, because you know you're gonna get the longest story ever. Sorry. You'll have to forgive me. This is my jaded side of ministry coming out in live action. But you're like, you just feel like every time you ask them something, they're like, my life's the worst. And you're like, every week? Every week. How is it the worst? Every single week. And so what happens, you get fatigued of that person and you're like, I'm gonna like, hey, good to see you, I gotta go. Why? Because you don't want that compassion fatigue to wrap up to where you're just gonna explode on this person like, your life's not that bad. I just let all of you into the world of pastoring right there, okay? Some of you are like, what's pastoring like? That's it. All this inner turmoil going on. And I'm like, I get paid to be nice to these people, but I want to be nice. That's not how I look at pastoring, by the way. I love you guys. And everybody's going to be second guessing now. Like, am I allowed to talk to Derek? Jesus is not going to be fatigued by your coming to him. He yearns for, he longs for. Would you bring to me all of your hurt, all of your shame, all of your pain? Bring it to me because I care for you. I care for you. He's moved with compassion when he sees his children. He's not run out of compassion. Look at verse 35 to 37. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place. And I want you to think back for just a moment to the first verse of this passage in verse 30. Jesus sees they're tired and he says, let us go to a desolate place. Let us go to the wilderness so you can rest. And now the disciples come to Jesus and say, Jesus, this is a desolate place and the hour is now late. How about we send them away and go into the surrounding countryside and villages and let them buy something to eat? And Jesus answered them, how about you give them something to eat? And they said to him, shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat? Jesus is giving the disciples a test here. He's giving them a test. And it always amazes me that the disciples that have now come to the realization of who Jesus is, what his purpose is on this earth, that he is the very Son of God, the Messiah that everyone has been longing for, but yet the disciples continue to put their foot in their mouth. I mean, think about it. They come up to Jesus. I don't know, like, if you know, but it's getting kind of late and I think everybody's kind of hungry. You think Jesus doesn't know this? And I think I should say something. Like Jesus, he may have missed this part. I'm gonna bring it to him. Maybe the disciples are just really ready for their rest time. They're like, Jesus, you said that we were going away to rest. This is not resting. We're organizing now. So if we could kind of wrap it up and then we're gonna get some sleep. The disciples noticed the problem, but they came to Jesus still without faith. I want you to think about this, because the disciples just got sent out to proclaim the kingdom, to do what God has asked them to do. Miracles are happening. People are responding to the gospel, and then they come to Jesus and they're like, hey, I don't know what we're gonna do about this. We don't have any food, it's late, let's send them home. And I wonder how many times that Jesus tests us, the Lord tests us, but we don't know that we're in the middle of a test. I don't think that Jesus gives us this warning and he's like, hey, listen, for the next week, I'm gonna give you a really difficult test. Just prepare for it. No. Now, I talk often about my neighbor growing up. My neighbor growing up was a farrier, a cowboy. And yes, we do have real cowboys in Florida. Just want to clear the record, because people think that we just all wear flip-flops and board shorts all our life and we live at the beach and we sleep in tents and we're just a bunch of hippies. Some of that is not true, some it is. But I used to think that all Texans wore cowboy hats and everybody owned a horse. So there's that. My neighbor growing up, he's this old cowboy, the toughest man I've ever met. He's had multiple hip replacements. He's got a titanium shoulder. He's had back surgeries. If you know somebody that shoes horses, it's hard work. And he did it his by himself his entire life. And what I learned about this man is that you never knew if he was actually giving you a test. You're just kind of working and doing something, and then you get to the end, you're like, I think Mr. Jim was giving me a test. He was testing me, he was teaching me something. He was giving me a lesson. And that's kind of what Jesus is doing here to his disciples. They don't know that they're in a test. And they say, hey, we don't have any food. And Jesus says, how about you feed them? Here's the test. And I think this is the thread of faith and reason, the tension of faith and reason that I was talking about earlier. What the disciples are bringing up is, it's reasonable, right? Hey, there's a lot of people, they don't have food, they're gonna be hungry, and if they don't get home or if they don't find a store, they're not gonna be able to feed themselves for the night. That's reasonable. And so I think really what this comes down to is this. Faith and reason do not have to be at odds with another, but we do have to have discernment when to lean into one or the other. We have to have discernment in our lives that will say, hey, this is a moment, specific moment that I'm really, really living by faith and trusting in the Lord. In fact, Lindsay and I, when we resigned from student ministry a long time ago, we always said, we will never plant a church. Isn't it funny how the Lord's like, I'll remember that one? And he does. And he calls you to something. And then we start praying about it. We're like, yes, we're gonna change the world by this church plant in Magnolia, Texas. It's gonna be amazing. And then it doesn't happen. Well, we've not changed the world yet. So how are we getting, living by faith and trusting that the Lord has called you to do what he's called you to do, and that you are being obedient to it. Discernment. Again, knowing that if the Lord is calling you to something, he's going to provide, but that doesn't mean that we just wake up every day and not have a plan for our life and what the Lord has put in front of us and to be good stewards of it. We have to be discerning in the moment. Do I step out in faith here? Do I use reason? Jesus was testing them. Look again, verse 38 through 44. He said, how many loaves do you have? Go and see. And when they found out, they said, 5 loaves and 2 fish. And then he commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups by the hundreds and by 50s. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and he said a blessing, and he broke the loaves. And he gave it to the disciples and to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them. And when they ate and when they'd all eaten, they were all satisfied. And they took up the 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of fish. And those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. Now, most of the time when I've heard this passage preached, the focus is on the miracle of Jesus multiplying the bread. In the context that I grew up in, it's like, it got really twisted really quickly to where it's like, well, God's gonna multiply your salary and then you're gonna be rich. And like, how do we get from rich to the loaves? I don't understand what's going on right now. That's not what this is about. Think about Jesus has already risen somebody from the dead, this young girl of this servant, and now he's healed this woman of the issue of the bleeding that has been searching for 14 years. Multiplying bread for Jesus is nothing. He's like, I do this in my sleep. I have a good sneeze and bread multiplies. So the focus becomes like on this idea of the multiplication, but there's so much more than what Jesus is doing than just multiplying fish. Look what N.T. Wright said about Jesus and his miracles. Jesus' miracles were not just displays of power, but were also signs of God's kingdom breaking into the world. Jesus and his kingdom breaking into this world that has been longing for a king, longing for this Messiah. He's not doing it to wow the crowd. What he is doing is saying, listen, I am the one that you have been searching for. I am the Messiah. And ushering in this kingdom. Now let's talk about the miracle just for a second, because it is pretty neat. The meal in and of itself, not very impressive. This would have been barley loaves of bread, kind of a flat bread, not a lot of flavor in it. It was kind of a staple in the diet. Like if you were to be traveling, like, hey, make sure you take a loaf of barley bread. Doesn't sound very good, does it? It's not like everybody loves sourdough now. Sourdough's great. I don't think barley bread is gonna be that great. Just gonna be honest. Take a loaf of barley bread. That's the kind of food that it was. The fish, some of you are thinking like good seafood. No, this is a dried piece of fish that has been salted and preserved so that on their travels, they can, I'm a little bit hungry. Little piece of fish jerky. Do they sell that at Buc-ee's? I don't know if they do or not, but they have good jerky. And I think what this is showing us is that the provision of the Lord, it doesn't have to be done in some fancy and elaborate way. We sometimes equate the provision of the Lord to this great grand idea, but we miss out on the everyday moments where God is providing for us, and we skip over it and we think, hey, I got this great meal. Somebody took me to dinner. Now the Lord's providing for me. You have food on your table? Guess what? The Lord is providing for you. It's his provision. It may even be a meal that you're not even very thankful for because you've eaten it 5 times in the last month. Y'all have those meals in your house? So you're like, you've had it so much, you're like, we're gonna put that on the shelf for about 2 years because if one more bite gets taken, we might gag. Not because it's not a good meal, but because you've eaten it so much. You become accustomed to it. Jesus provides for these people in an ordinary meal. And I think what he's communicating to us here is that he wants to satisfy you and provide for you even in the ordinary of your life. He wants to satisfy you and provide for you even in the ordinary. Sometimes it's as simple as just slowing down long enough to know that you have been provided for. I don't know if you've ever been to like a fancy restaurant. I did not grow up going to fancy restaurants. Fancy restaurant in my family was like Outback Steakhouse. And some of you are like, yeah, it's fancy. It's not. It's not fancy. And then I married into a restaurant family. And they liked fancy restaurants. And that we would go with like the managers. They would take managers on these meals, and the restaurants paid for it. It was like this amazing thing. At first time I sat down in one of these restaurants, I'm like, first of all, there is way too many utensils on this table. I grew up with 2 brothers, there's 3 of us, and no, like give me 1 fork and give me a knife, and you can take the spoon because I'm not eating anything that has to be eaten with a spoon. It's steak and potatoes. That was my experience. But what do they do at fancy restaurants? Do you ever notice that they're never in a hurry to serve you? Never. One of my favorite restaurants, I think, wow, Derek really needs to take a pay cut, is Papa's Brothers Steakhouse in Houston. If you've never been, it'll change your life. I'm telling you, it's amazing. We go there for like very special things, like once every 3 years. And then we eat ramen the rest of the month. But it's worth it. But you go to these restaurants and it takes hours, 3-4 hours sometimes. What you never notice on those meals is like, wow, this is taking forever. No, you're just enjoying it and you're eating. You're like, how do you make a potato taste like that? That's amazing. Like lobster mac and cheese, are you kidding me right now? I'm ready to punch a kitten. Like, this is so good. I don't know why kittens like to stray, like just caught a stray bullet. I don't know. Just came out, Sudafed. We need to wrap this up. Sometimes it's just as simple as slowing down enough to enjoy his provision. When you go to a quick service restaurant, their goal is to get you in and out as fast as possible so they can seat the table again. In fact, we were at dinner like last week, and they came up to our table like, I'm sorry, we have a reservation for this table. We're gonna need you to. I'm like, fine. I'm gonna sit in the parking lot for 2 hours. It's fast, right? It's like they're trying to get you going. What if we just slow down and recognize the provision that the Lord has given us all throughout our life? A couple of things that I want to point out in this passage. One is that Jesus invites us to look back to face the present. As he's providing for these people, these people of God, they're recounting in their minds of all the ways that God has done what Jesus is about to do. From the beginning of time, Adam and Eve, they walked in the garden with God. He was with them. He was near them. He even created a tabernacle for God's presence to rest among the people. It was to be the center of all of their life. And then we see here in Ezekiel chapter 34, look what it says. Ezekiel the prophet, it says, I will rescue my flock, and they shall no longer be a prey. And I will judge between sheep and sheep, and I, the Lord, will set up over them one shepherd, my servant David. And he shall feed them. And he shall feed them and be their shepherd, and I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David shall be prince among them. I am the Lord, and I have spoken. I am setting up a shepherd over you. I am here to care for you. And so Jesus starts looking back at what God has done already, and these people are sitting there, and what God is trying to communicate is, I am the shepherd that you have been longing for and searching for generation after generation. At the time of Jesus, it has been over 700 years since Israel had a king. And in the economy of God, they would call the kings the shepherd, because they weren't just ruling and judging, they were to care for the wealth of the people, caring deeply. And Jesus reminds them, listen, I am the shepherd that you've been longing for. The Lord has not forgotten you, and I'm with you. Most scholars see a connection in the story of Jesus feeding 5,000 to the famous Psalm 23. I'm sure that you can kind of pick up on some of the correlations, but I want to read it for us this morning as we close. And it's what it says. The Lord, this is David, remember, the shepherd. I'm going to set up a shepherd for you, and his name's going to be David. And Jesus is saying, I am the good shepherd, but look what he says here. David, I am the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you, the shepherd, are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd. He makes me lie down in green pastures. I wonder what was going on in the minds of the disciples as they're thinking like, Lord, you said you saw our tiredness. You said you were bringing us to a desolate place. And then all these people showed up. And then it's almost like you just forgot about us. You started ministering. You were moved with compassion. Why are you always moved with compassion, Jesus? And little by little, I believe that the disciples started to see that their rest is not going to come from just taking a break from work. But what Jesus was trying to communicate to them is, I am your rest. If you, weary and tired daughter and son, will come to me, I am the one that will give you the rest. You can go away to a mountainside. Great. You want true rest? It's found in me. The longing that you have for the things of this world and to be fulfilled and to find refreshment, Jesus is saying, I am that person for you. I shall not want. Why? Because I'm under the care of the Good Shepherd. He makes me lie down in green pastures. When my life is chaotic and it's got this speed wobble to it and I don't know how I'm gonna hold on, he makes me lie down. You know, one of my favorite word lines in the Bible, I think it's in Psalm like 5 or 6, David's writing and he's being chased by Saul and his army. And he's lamenting to God and he's like, God, why am I in this situation? You're the one that anointed me. Like I didn't ask to be anointed. You anointed me and now my life's on the line. He's lamenting to the Lord. And there's this one line that is just so amazing. People are chasing after his life and he says, and I laid down and slept. And we kind of rush through that. What David is hinting at is like, I have all that I need in the Lord and I have so much peace because of what the Lord has done in me. No matter what the external circumstances are, I can lay down and rest because I know the Good Shepherd has me. It's beautiful. Beautiful that he would care enough for us to communicate that to us. Lastly, is that Jesus is preparing the people for the Last Supper. He's preparing people for the Last Supper. He looks up in the heavens and he breaks the bread and he prays that God would bless it. And then he provides for all of the people. But what he was communicating is that soon and very soon, This bread is going to be my body, and we're going to have the blood of Jesus along with it. And it is going to provide for you a way and in a way that you do not expect, but it's going to be the nourishment that your soul has been longing for. Spiritual refreshment, spiritual rest.